So with it just being Halloween, I decided to watch the Halloween themed miniseries Over the Garden Wall, which premiered on Cartoon Network in 2014. This is the first time I've rewatched the series since it originally aired, and my god, not only does it still hold up, but I've been wanting to talk about this show for a long time. And with it being its 10-year anniversary, now seems like a better time than any. Plus I was reminded that I did in fact promise to review this show a long time ago, so yeah, this is for you, Gabe. Over the Garden Wall is a mini-series created by Patrick McHale. The series was designed to be a one-off, and so only consists of 10 episodes, each running for roughly around 10 minutes. I remember when I first saw the announcement for this series back in 2014, and I was just immediately drawn in. The trailer looked dark, mysterious, and creepy, almost like an animated horror film. So naturally, it had my curiosity. And I felt like this was something that Cartoon Network really needed at the time. Because around this period, Cartoon Network was sort of going through its wacky random era. We were getting shows like Adventure Time, Regular Show, and The Amazing World of Gumball, all of which had this high energy, bright, very loud vibes to them. And don't get me wrong, I love these shows, but the style was beginning to fatigue on me at the time. And then when we started to get stuff like Uncle Grandpa, it really felt like Cartoon Network was leaning into this random equals funny mentality. And then we also got Teen Titans Go. So it really seemed that Cartoon Network was abandoning this darker and more mature kind of show, and instead was just catering to a younger demographic, focusing on the fast, flashy, loud memeable content to cater for low attention span audiences. But then we get Over the Garden Wall, a show which seemed to be in complete contrast to what had come before, by presenting us with these brown earthy colours, dark shadows, somber piano score playing gently in the background, and a soft-spoken narrator setting the story.
Somewhere lost in the clouded annals of history lies a place that few have seen.
Rather than overstimulating, it felt relaxing, cozy almost. The animation style was an interesting mix of having that modern cow art style look to it, but also drawing plenty of inspiration from that 1930s style where everything seemed to be a little uncanny and almost creepy-like. And the overall design is meant to have it feel like you're looking into an old school storybook, with episodes even being referred to as chapters. But by far, one of the most notable features for me has to be its soundtrack, composed by Greg Whipple. The music feels very old school, played with traditional instruments, and sung in a very folklore kind of way. And each episode does have its own unique song number, ranging from joyful, to charming,
Over the treetops and mountains, over the blackened ravines,
to just downright creepy.
And use you in his lantern for to burn.
Not forgetting the main theme of the show, which is just absolutely gorgeous.
and how the gentle wind beckons through the leaves.
Alright, so the plot. The story follows two half-brothers, Wirt and Greg, who find themselves lost in a mysterious forest known as the Unknown. They befriend a talking bird named Beatrice, who says that she can take them to a lady named Adelaide, who will be able to guide them back home. Out of the three main characters we have Wirt, who is the older of the two brothers. Wirt is a very anxious and cautious individual, often holding a very pessimistic attitude to life, and has the tendency to overthink much of the time. He's voiced by Elijah Wood, who I think does a brilliant job at giving Wirt that very straight-laced voice, to contrast with all the madness going on around him.
I'm just lost. See, we're trying to get to...
I'm the highwayman.
Okay, good to know.
Then we have Greg, voiced by Colin Dean, who in contrast to Wirt has a much happier and more optimistic look on life, though he's not the sharpest tool in the shed, and sometimes his naivety can lead to them getting into trouble.
Our pennies! Why did you do that?
'Cause Uncle Endicott pegged me all wrong. I've got no sense.
And finally we have Beatrice, voiced by Melanie Lunsky.
Curse you, lady, curse you. You'll die someday, and I'll laugh. Laugh!
who holds a very cynical and realist take on the world,
The world is a miserable place, Greg. Life isn't fun.
and is usually the brains behind the situation. She starts off quite cold, but as the episodes go on, she starts to bond more with the brothers, and almost becomes like a mothering role to them later on. As the three journey to find Adelaide, they encounter a series of strange situations filled with uncanny characters, all whilst trying to avoid a mysterious creature known only as the Beast, who they are warned will try to take them if given the chance. As I mentioned earlier, this series has a much darker palette than is seen in much other kids' cartoons, and it also has a much darker tone to go along with it. As our characters explore through this dark and mysterious world, there is constantly that sense of danger in the air as to what might jump out at them next. And the show makes you very aware of this very quickly. As in episode 1, we're presented with a creepy old woodsman who you don't quite know is friend or foe, and a monstrous creature with a fiercely striking design. But then in episode 2, our characters come across a village full of these creepy pumpkin-like people, and after accidentally causing some damage, our trio are imprisoned. And you're thinking, yep, these guys are definitely evil. They're either going to keep our heroes in prison for life or have them killed. But no, in actuality, they just wanted them to help dig up their old relatives so they could have a party. And once that's done, they let our characters go on their way. I thought that was a great little subversion and sets the tone of the show that everything may not be as it initially seems. Though this episode does have this eerie line towards the end.
You sure you want to leave?
Me? Yes.
Oh, well, you'll join us someday.
Man, that's morbid. There are also some really other messed up moments in the series that I don't think were meant to be messed up, such as in episode 6 during a chase scene. There's a frog couple with a bunch of children that are bumped into, and when they end up dropping all of their babies onto the floor. The babies are there like flailing and crying, and then to make it worse, one of them is stepped on and flung into the air by an officer. Like, what the fuck? And the writers clearly thought this joke was so funny that they happened to do it a second time. Man, this little guy is going to need a lot of therapy. But by far the darkest and my most favourite element of this series has to be the Beast. My god, do I absolutely love this character. He actually reminds me a lot of the wolf from Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, in that he doesn't actually get that much screen time, and when he does, it's mainly just him lurking in the shadows, but his presence is always felt throughout the show as an ongoing threat, and when we do get to see more of him towards the end, it is just so freaking good. I absolutely love his design, this beautiful imagery of a darkened figure with piercing bright eyes, and is wonderfully voiced by Samuel Raimi.
No, there is only me. There is only my way. There is only the forest, and there is only surrender.
So now I'm going to start tapping into some spoiler elements of the show, so if you haven't seen it already, I highly recommend going to see it first, and then coming back to this review. Alright, let's go. So as we get to episode 6, we get the reveal that Beatrice was only bringing the boys to Adelaide to have them be used as servants, and in return, Adelaide would give Beatrice the wing clippers to turn her and her family back into humans. I do like this twist, as upon rewatching, you notice all the little seeds that were planted for it, like how Beatrice was watching the boys prior to meeting them, and how she made herself join their quest by trapping herself in the bush. And we see as the episodes go on just how pushy she is to hurry them along to Adelaide's.
We'll just focus on getting you guys to Adelaide so I can wash my hands of this whole affair, and if you could pick up the pace a bit, that'd be great, okay?
What I don't like, however, is how the show pulls the old liar reveal plot. Because yes, Beatrice did deceive the boys to bring them to Adelaide, but her understanding was that they were just going to be used to help tidy up the place, and not be used as slaves.
I want a child servant.
Servant? I thought you just wanted some yard work done.
But of course, the characters do the annoying thing, when instead of saying, "Oh what, no, she tricked me, she told me she only needed you to do a few chores, not to enslave you, come on, I'll help you guys escape," she instead just stands there and goes,
What?
yeah. And after Beatrice defeats Adelaide,
The deadly! Ah!
Whoa, jeez, she wasn't kidding!
It's French!
Wirt and Greg have already escaped, And so we get the whole cliche misunderstanding moment. Now, fortunately, it's not dragged out too much, as when the characters do reunite, things are cleared up pretty quickly, but I still hate this trope so much. It annoyed me in the first Shrek film, and it annoys me here. Please, oh please, stop using it. By episode 8, our characters are at their lowest point, and at the end of it, Greg is lured away by the beast. Wirt wakes up and goes looking for Greg, but in doing so, falls into an icy lake, only to be rescued by Beatrice at the very end. Then we get episode 9, the prequel episode, which takes place just before Wirt and Greg end up getting lost into the unknown. Now originally, this was actually going to be the first episode, and I've even heard people say online that it's best to watch episode 9 first and then start the series from episode 1 onwards. I disagree with that.
You disagree?
I think that would have ruined a lot of the mystery element as to where they were and how did they even get there. And it would have spoiled a lot of reveals that we get later on, such as when we hear Wirt talk about this guy called Jason Funderburker, who apparently swooped in and wooed a girl that Wirt had a crush on.
And then Jason Funderburker comes out of nowhere and whisks her away. Ugh, Jason Funderburker, that guy.
So you're picturing this guy as sort of like a massive jock douchebag of a character, when in episode 9 we get the reveal that he's actually just a very average guy.
Hey, Sarah. Are you ready to go?
Hey, Jason Funderburker.
Oh, hey, Wirt.
Why, he's nothing but a nerd. Oh, I'm so depressed.
Which I thought was a nice twist to show us how Wirt's mindset will often over-dramatize things. And it's in this episode we really do get to see how Wirt self-sabotages his own life. He has a massive crush on this girl Sarah, but is afraid to do anything as he believes it'll all go wrong, so essentially hands her over to Jason Funderburker.
You coming, Wirt?
No, you go. Have fun with Jason Funderburker.
And when Greg takes the initiative to try and help Wirt then uses Greg as an excuse for why it didn't work out, even though Greg's actions only helped further things along. We also see a hint of this get further extended as Wirt lets out this line.
Once again, you ruined my life.
Who, me?
Oh, you and your stupid dad.
Perhaps angry at the fact that his mum and dad split and he wanted them to get back together, and so when Greg's dad came along, he sees this as an obstacle for why his parents would never get back together, rather than accepting the fact that perhaps they were always going to stay separated no matter what. And I think it's nice seeing Wirt's personality all the way back here to now how we're seeing him at the end of the series, offering a nice contrast as to how he's changed and progressed as a person. Seeing him go from his initial mindset of resenting Greg and refusing to take initiative, to now be willing to risk his life in order to go out and save him.
At least wait until the storm dies down a bit. You'll be no good to your brother dead.
I was never any good to him alive either.
I just love that line. So finally we get to episode 10, where the beast has taken Greg and is now turning him into a tree, in which the wood from it can be used to grind down into oil for the woodsman's lantern. Which, yes, this means that every time we've seen the woodsman cutting down one of these trees, he's effectively been cutting down a person, made all the more horrifying when you see the faces of the victims still present in the trees themselves. The point of the oil is to keep the lantern lit, which contains the soul of the woodsman's daughter that the beast put in there for him. But Wirt becomes a little suspicious of this when he sees at how keen the beast is to keep the lantern lit, and figures out that the lantern must actually contain the soul of the beast and not that of the woodsman's daughter. I gotta say, I love this final episode. The way the beast playfully manipulates Greg into freezing in the cold, and the way he gleefully sings once he's done it. This episode has such an unbelievably dark tone, and the music to go with it is so on point here.
Let's get him out of this, come on!
Yeah. Come on!
This is also the first time in the series that we see the beast lose his cool, as he becomes more angered and desperate. And then we get this brief shot of him as the woodman shines his light upon him. What the actual fuck is that nightmare fuel? It looks like his entire body is made up of these Edelwood souls that he's consumed over time, and it's like they're almost still conscious, forever in despair and crying. How did the show manage to get this through? Realizing the devastating truth, the woodsman sheds a tear for the loss of his daughter and with a heavy blow, extinguishes the lamp.
Ready to go back to that empty house? No, woodsman!
We then cut to Wirt and Greg emerging from the water that they fell in at the end of episode 9, where they are discovered by their friends and taken to hospital. Sarah says to Wirt that she would like to listen to the tape that Wirt made for her, and Greg begins to tell the others of the story of what happened. We then get a montage of the characters we've seen throughout the series, which includes the woodsman finding his daughter, and Beatrice having now been turned back into a human, where the series ends. So here comes the big question. Was it all a dream? Did Wirt and Greg simply imagine the events that took place after they fell into the water? I'm gonna say no, on the pure basis that we see Greg's frog still has the bell inside its stomach that it consumed in episode 7. Plus, if Wirt and Greg were now awake, why would we then be shown the other characters still living out their lives? My theory on what happened is that when the boys began to drown in the lake, they started to cross into the afterlife, but first entered into a state of purgatory, and that is what the unknown is, a place for lost souls that for whatever reason haven't been able to fully move into the afterlife. And there are several factors to support this. It would explain why all the characters in the unknown seem to dress from earlier points in history. In episode 9 we briefly see a gravestone with the name Quincy Endicott written on it, which is the same guy who appears in episode 5. In episode 2, where it's revealed that the pumpkin people are in fact dead, one of them states to Wirt that he doesn't look like he's quite ready to join them yet.
Aren't you a little too early?
What do you mean?
I mean, it doesn't seem like you're ready to join us just yet.
Also, I noticed when editing this, how she puts emphasis on when she says people don't tend to pass through Pottsfield.
Folks don't tend to pass through Pottsfield.
And having this take place in Purgatory would make sense as to why we still see our characters continuing to exist after Wirt and Greg have woken up, and why the woodsman is suddenly able to reunite with his daughter, who had previously died, as having come to terms with her death and no longer feeling burdened to keep the lantern lit, he too was now also able to pass on. And then we have this last little exchange between Wirt and Beatrice.
Goodbye, Beatrice.
Goodbye, Wirt.
Not just a goodbye as in Wirt is now returning to his life, but also the fact that Beatrice might also be moving on with hers, now that she was able to lift the curse from her family. There's also further hints of this theory outside of the show's lore, as early in production, the unknown was actually called the In-Between, and in the book, The Art of Over the Garden Wall, it describes the unknown as, quote, the place between life and death, between dreams and reality. The creator of the show also weighed in on this in a 2020 interview. When directly asked about the theory of the unknown being purgatory, he responded with the answer, any interpretation that feels right to people is a perfectly valid interpretation to me. McHale also talked about some other ideas for the show's ending, which included Wirt sacrificing himself and staying in the unknown so that Greg could go home, and another where Greg and Wirt both get on the train that we see just before they fall into the lake. Perhaps like a train to take them into the afterlife, similar to that one episode of Tom and Jerry? Man, that would have been dark. One question that I couldn't find an answer to, however, was the purpose of these little black turtles that appear throughout the show. My theory is that there's something to do with the beast, as they are seen to possess a dog in the first episode, turning it into a demon. So maybe it's like an Adventure Time where you'd see the little snail appear that was possessed by the Lich? I don't know. If any of you guys have further insight into that one, do let me know in the comments. But yeah, Over the Garden Wall. It's a fantastic mini-series that I think still holds up to this day. If I were to have some negatives with the show, it would be that I think Greg can sometimes be a little bit much at times, and that episode 3 is definitely the weak point in the series. It's not a bad episode per se, but also doesn't really serve anything into the overall narrative, and kind of feels like a filler episode, which is not great when you only have 10 episodes in total to work with. And I think the Potato and Molasses song does overstay its welcome a bit.
No potatoes and molasses. If you can't see 'em, put on your glasses.
Which, by the way, what the hell is molasses? Oh, Apparently it's a kind of syrup. What? Ultimately though, I still really love this miniseries. It looks beautiful, it sounds beautiful, and its blend of both charm and creepiness is fantastic. Definitely check it out if you haven't already, and if you have already seen it, I highly recommend giving it a rewatch. Also, Cartoon Network just released this brand new short to celebrate Over the Garden Wall's 10th anniversary. It's in stop motion, it looks absolutely gorgeous, sounds absolutely gorgeous, so definitely go check it out if you haven't done already. And until the next one guys, take care.